Hello everyone and welcome back to Dot Line Academy. So have you ever wondered that is there any difference between a adult bone and a young bone? And have you ever thought that where in the bone the RBCs and the WBCs are formed? So in this video these all questions will be answered. So we are going to study about the gross anatomy of bones. Okay, so without wasting any time, let's dive in and let's see what topics we are going to study in this video. Okay, we are going to study about the gross anatomy of bone, and in that we will study about the parts of bones. Okay, the bone is divided into shaft, metaphysis and ends, that is epiphysis, and the shaft is also called diaphysis. Okay, in the shaft there are three parts: periosteum, cortex and medulla. So we will study about all these topics one by one. So what is the gross anatomy of bone? When we study the bone from a naked eye, it is gross anatomy. So any structure's gross anatomy is when we study that structure from our naked eye. When we study the anatomy of that structure from a naked eye, it will be the gross anatomy. So when we study the bone from a naked eye, it will be the gross anatomy of bone. So to study the gross anatomy of bone, we will have to take a long bone. So okay, we are going to consider a long bone to study the gross anatomy. So first of all, we have to study the parts of bone. There are different parts of bone. Okay, so we will go them one by one. Basically, there are two parts. Basically, the shaft and the ends, the diaphysis and the epiphysis. Epiphysis are the ends. So usually the bone have two ends, and the diaphysis is the middle part. So first, coming to the diaphysis, it is the elongated middle part of the bone. Okay, it is made up of compact bone. The diaphysis is made up of compact bone. Okay, it is hard. So the three parts in the diaphysis: periosteum, cortex and medulla. Periosteum is the outermost part, cortex is just inside the periosteum, and medulla is the inner part. Okay, you can relate these cortex and medulla, these two terms, from the brain's cortex and medulla and from the kidneys cortex and medulla. Okay, these are the same words. Cortex means outside and medulla means at the middle. Now coming to the epiphysis. Epiphysis are ends. Okay, these are usually spongy bones. Why they are spongy? Because they are made up of calcareous bone. The material, the calcium carbonate deposited in them is loose, is soft. Okay, that's why they are soft and spongy in nature, covered with hyaline cartilage. So as the shaft was covered with the periosteum, same way these epiphyses are covered with the hyaline cartilage. The shaft's periosteum's continuation is the hyaline cartilage of epiphysis. You can consider it. Now shaft. Now if we take a little part of the shaft and zoom in, okay, so we will get to know about the detailed structure of the shaft. Okay, so the periosteum is the covering of the shaft. Okay, we are peeling that covering off here. It is the covering of the shaft. Okay, the bone. So this area, yellow part, is the compact bone called cortex. Okay, the cortex is made up of the compact bone. Why compact? The calcium carbonate deposition in the cortex is dense. The calcium carbonate deposition is dense there. So inside the cortex there is medulla. So in medulla there is a spongy bone. Some part is a spongy bone. Okay, and inside that there is a hollow structure. Okay, hollow structure is filled with the bone marrow. Okay, the red bone marrow and the yellow bone marrow. So coming to the each part one by one. First, periosteum. So fibrous membrane surrounding the bone is periosteum. So periosteum is a fibrous membrane, highly supplied with nerves and blood vessels. Yes, it is a very important point that periosteum is supplied with, which is highly supplied with blood and nerves vessels. That's why when there is a fracture in the bone, when there is a hairline fracture in the bone, the periosteum is involved, and that's why the periosteum nerves are being triggered and the pain is being caused. Okay, this is the reason of pain at the bones. So they are highly sensitive. Now the cortex was this part, It is made up of compact bone, as I told you. It is highly strong. The cortex is highly strong because the calcium salt deposition in the cortex is very dense. So this compact bone is the reason of the strength of the bone. Okay, the strength of the bone is so high that we can compare its strength to iron and steel. Okay, these bones are such highly strong. Medulla. Medulla is the innermost part. It is mostly a hollow part. Inside the spongy bone, the medulla is a hollow part filled with bone marrow. What kind of bone marrow? The question arises that I asked you in the starting. Initially, the bone marrow present in medulla is red bone marrow. Okay, initially. By initially, I mean at the stages of the fetal life and at the initial phases of the life, the medulla is filled with red bone marrow and is active in hematopoiesis. What is hematopoiesis? Hematopoiesis is the generation of red blood cells, the blood corpuscles, heme. Okay, so hematopoiesis is the generation or genesis of the red blood cells and even the white blood cells. Okay, hematopoietin hormone will trigger it and hematopoiesis will occur in the red bone marrow. So initially this red bone marrow is present in all the long bones. Okay, but later in adulthood, when the adulthood strikes, the red bone marrow atrophies to yellow bone marrow. Okay, yellow bone marrow is a fatty and it has no power of hematopoiesis. The yellow bone marrow is atrophied red bone marrow. That means the what you can say, the vestigial bone marrow, red bone marrow. Okay, the not used red bone marrow. So the red bone marrow is converted into the yellow bone marrow. They are not being used. Okay, but at the places of sternum, ribs, vertebra and skull, at these bones the red bone marrow persists and the red blood cells and the other corpuscles of the blood are being formed. The hematopoiesis occurs in sternum, ribs, vertebra and skulls in the adulthood. So it is a very beautiful question that comes in the exams, that at the age of 25 or at the age of 30, 35 or in the adulthood, at what places the genesis of blood or the blood corpuscles or the genesis of hematopoiesis takes place. So the answer will be sternum, ribs, vertebra, skull. Okay, not femur, but in the initial phases the femur will be the answer. So what is the difference between young and adult bone? So this was the second question I asked in the starting. We can say that the young bones are the developing bones and the adult bones are the developed bones. Okay, the young bones are the ossifying bones that are being ossified and the adult bones are the ossified bones. So this is the main difference, the epiphyseal plate and the metaphysis, the main difference between the adult and the young bones. In the young bones you will find the metaphysis prominent and the epiphyseal plates there. In the adult bones you will not find the epiphyseal plates. You may find epiphyseal lines, okay, but you will not find epiphyseal plates. Okay, and the metaphysis will also be not very distinct. All the other parts of the bone will be there, but this epiphyseal plate and the metaphysis will distinguish all the things. So let's consider this X-ray. This is a knee, this is femur, this is tibia, this is patella. So it is a child's X-ray and it is a adult's knee X-ray. So you can see this line. So this line is the epiphyseal line, the metaphysis, the end of metaphysis. So this line is the end of metaphysis. Why this line appears in the X-ray? The reason is because the X-rays reflects back from the solid structures. That means the calcareous bones, but not the soft structures. You can see this muscle, it is not prominent because the X-rays are not being reflected properly. The same way in the epiphyseal line, plate, and at metaphysis these X-rays are not being reflected and these lines are prominent. But in adult these epiphyseal plates and the metaphysis are being fused. The epiphyseal fusing has been occurred and this bone has been fused in a one bone. Okay, so this line is not here, but you can see this line here in the developing young child's X-ray. So in the young bone there is diaphysis, metaphysis and epiphysis. So the diaphysis of the young bone is the same, is the elongated middle part of the bone, also called shaft. But in metaphysis is the active growing part of a young bone. It is the end of diaphysis and it has epiphyseal growth plate. This is very important. Epiphyseal growth plate is at the end of the metaphysis, at the side of epiphysis. This growth plate is there, and it is responsible for the elongation of that bone, okay, for the development of that bone. Metaphysis is highly supplied with blood vessels. As development is occurring there, they are highly supplied with blood vessels. Metaphysis is a barrier between shaft and the end, means the epiphysis. So as the bone fuses, as I've shown you in the X-ray, the bone fuses, this structure merges in the diaphysis and epiphysis and leaves the bone as a single bone. Okay, so after the fusion, epiphyseal fusion, the complete bone will appear as a single bone, and this metaphysis will disappear, or a remnant of this metaphysis may appear, that will be a epiphyseal line. Okay, epiphysis is also same as that of adult. Epiphysis is the ends of bone usually rounded. Usually the epiphyseal ends of the bone are rounded. Okay, the epiphysis is filled with red bone marrow. So here we reach the end of the video. Thank you very much to being till here. If you like this lecture, please like the video and subscribe my channel. There are lots more video to come. So on this note, this is Mohammad Saad signing off. Bye.